Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson. And Ish, it's been a week. It's been a week.
Yep.
We had a week off. We had to take Christmas off a little bit. We did have the Mark Campbell interview up. I believe a little over a week ago at this point.
Yep.
So go check that out if y'all haven't already. I know that was I tried throwing that like early in the morning before the state championship games because I had to get it out because it was before they started conference play, which was the 21st.
hmm
So I just gotta sneak this out real quick.
Yeah.
But go check that out if you haven't already. Mark Campbell is incredible, TCU women's basketball head coach. Shout out to him for coming on fairly short notice, a couple of days, and before they started conference play, in which they routinely just beat UCF by 40 in that game. So shout out to Mark Campbell, friend of the pod. But we're gonna do a little stock report today before conference play starts. I think it's a good way for us to reset, kind of look at our expectations before the year to compare to where we are now.
hmm
We're going to do a lot of teams. We're not going to do every single team just because that would be 50 teams and we'd be here forever. But we're going to hit on a lot of the teams and kind of talk about where we are right now, our expectations going into conference. I have
Yeah.
our preseason records if we need to reference them, just
Okay.
to kind of go back on. But yeah, we'll go through as many as we can. We'll start on the men's side. And before I start, is there anybody in particular that you want to start with here? Because I was just going to go kind of in order. But
I mean, yeah. I mean, where are you at? Where you at with Baylor right now? Baylor men.
you might have just started with the toughest one.
I was about to say, I think that's why, because like that was the one where I think the other ones I'm fairly confident in, like up, down, staying the same, but I'm Baylor men. I want to say my gut tells me stock down, but I'm also like, have they just played three of the best teams in the country? And, one of those was a blowout because it was the first game of the season. They haven't looked that bad since. But I don't know. That's my thing. I do know that this team does not look as good as I thought it would.
I think stock down.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the stock is down. If it's not drastically down, it's not like a fire sale and everything's going crazy here, but it is
Mhm.
I looked at it before the season. I had them 14-6. You had them 13-7 in conference. I
Mhm.
think you are going to end up being more right on that. If they got to 13 wins, I think that'd be a tremendous season for them at this
Mhm.
point. KenPom has them at 12-6. Like you said, the sample size is just fairly small. They've played 5 games against good teams, and
Mhm.
they're 2-3 in those, with one in a double overtime win over St. John's. Which was chaos. But the
Mhm.
last data point we have is the UConn game, where
Right.
UConn was skidding a bit. That was December 4th, and we
Mhm.
said at the time we weren't going to talk about them until now because they've only played 3 games in that stretch. But they lost to UConn. I don't know if we know that they are not good enough to be on the top tier of the country. Gonzaga blew them
Right.
out. Tennessee beat them handily, and they lost to UConn. So with that ceiling being that low, I think in the Big 12 you could just get caught on some games like TCU could catch you.
Right.
Cincinnati at home on the third game could catch you. We'll
I was
see.
gonna
They
say
play.
like that's another reason why is you look at the Big 12 this year, and I think in my opinion, I think in my head, I think I had Houston, Iowa State, Baylor, Kansas as like my four.
Mhm.
Um, Now Baylor's definitely. I don't think Baylor's in that mix anymore. I think Cincinnati might be in that mix a little bit now. I think they're 10-1 right now. They haven't played too tough of a schedule, so I don't want to say
Yeah,
too much, but
they're good.
they look pretty good. Texas Tech might be in that bubble right now. We can talk a little bit more about them in a bit. Um, so that's where I'm kind of like where stock down is, where I see more teams coming into that bubble, and I don't feel as confident as Baylor being in there as much now. So yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of things. I think that obviously the defense is number one. Defense has just not been good.
Been
I also
terrible.
think Jeremy Roach has not been the plug and play point guard that they've had the past couple of years with, Akinjo and Jared going back to Jared Butler. And it seemed like every year somebody just plugged in. You just ran the offense the same, and I don't think it's worked that way. A little bit of multiple things for me. It's not all just Baylor, but it's also how good the rest of the Big 12 looks right now.
Yeah, and Rob Wright has been good.
Yep.
Roach's highlight this year was I believe was the game winner against St. John's.
Yep.
Which was awesome. But it you mentioned it. The defense has just been not.
Yeah.
This is now 3 straight years where
I'd say 3, yeah, since the Akinjo year, I'd say.
they just have not been good defensively. And that year they obviously had Sohan and Kendall Brown, which was
Sure, sure.
phenomenal. But yeah, that's 3 straight years now. The defense is just not good. They're 355th in 3-point percentage defense,
Mhm,
301st in effective field goal percentage defense, um, and 249th in free throw rate defense. They're just not. They're not able to guard right now, and we saw it with Gonzaga. We saw it with Tennessee, UConn. These teams that are just able to score on St. John's. Heck,
mhm.
Sam Houston dropped 67 on them. Like
Yeah.
you can't that's not good enough. So it'll be tested immediately. Utah, I think, um, is plays very fast and is capable. They play tomorrow on Tuesday. The Big 12 is really the only one that starts conference this early because they play 20 games.
Mhm,
The women have also started, which I mentioned, so they both are kind of starting early, but the rest of the conferences are starting late. But Baylor, I say stock down in terms of where we expected them to be at this point going in, and
mhm.
I just don't expect them to surpass 12 wins. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they get to 13, but
Right,
that's kind
right,
of their hard ceiling to me.
right. Yeah, it feels the same.
Now, if we stay here and we go to Houston, Houston is still fourth in KenPom. They're
Mhm,
8-3 though, and they have the overtime loss to San Diego, overtime loss to Alabama, and the loss to Auburn. Um, so they don't have that huge win on their
mhm.
resume. Are you feeling better or worse about Houston going into conference?
A little bit of the same. I think I'm the same with them.
Mhm,
I think maybe a tad worse, like a tad, like genuinely like a fraction,
mhm,
because I know they're still fourth in Ken Palm, but I think that they've had some consistent struggles with teams that are pretty good, right? I was hoping they would get one of those games against Auburn, who was Auburn, Alabama, San Diego State. I was
yeah.
hoping they'd get one of those type of wins last year, right? They had a couple. I think last year they had, I think they handily beat Utah, handily beat Xavier. Obviously, it wasn't a incredibly tough schedule last year, but
A&M.
yeah, so it was like they had those wins where you were like, okay, they're like they were crushing the teams that and that they should have beaten. And this year they haven't been that dominant. So like again, I'm gonna give them a tad of stock down, leaning more towards I feel the same. I still think this is a team that's probably the best in the Big 12.
Mhm,
I think I'd still pick them or Iowa State to win today. So, but this may just be a year where the Big 12 doesn't have somebody in the top 5 in the country, maybe. I don't know, but I still think Houston or Iowa State could be that team if they do.
yeah, I think I'm with you and slightly stock down because
Mhm,
I remember our conversations after those losses, and watching those games, it was the offense is still going to be a question to me,
mhm,
and then we have to see defensively kind of what they look like with the Crier, Sharp, Uzan, kind of replacing Jamal Shed
right.
on the perimeter. So I am still slightly stocked down, but going into the year, we have to remember we were also like, they're not going to be as dominant
Yeah.
potentially. I had them at 14-6 in conference. No, you had them 14-6 in
Mhm.
conference. I had them 16-4
I still think 14-6 is attainable.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I
I
think
mean,
I would lean maybe I would probably put that to 13-7 now, but I still think 14-6 is very
KenPom has
much.
them 15-5, but KenPom also loves them. So
Yeah.
it's a
Mm.
um. Let's round out the Big 12 with Texas Tech here, who I didn't even know, but they're up to 15th in KenPom.
Mm.
Sheesh.
Damn.
The offense is 13th, the defense 34th. I mean, their schedule's been very easy to this point,
Mhm.
so it's kind of similar to Texas in terms of, they've played A&M and lost, lost to St. Joe's, beat Syracuse and DePaul. Those are their best wins. So we don't have like a huge sample size here in terms of what exactly they look like.
Mhm.
Um, but now it's JT Toppin hasn't played since November 29th,
Yeah.
and let me go look for an update here, but that's kind of my biggest concern is will JT Toppin be able to make it through the whole conference season?
Yeah.
I
I
will
mean,
say
that's fair.
Grant said on what is this Monday or Sunday? They anticipate everybody being back for the start of conference season. So hopefully that means Toppin's back, because if this team is the disparity of with and without Toppin,
Yeah.
like the on-off splits have to be crazy for him.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I'd say I'm gonna give them a stock up because I do think that you mentioned their schedule. Their schedule is not impressive. I think their only 2 losses are to the only 2 teams inside the top 100 they've played.
Yeah.
So, like, again, there's still some things to work out, but the fact that I think we're talking about them in that Big 12 contender category is a step up because I thought they'd be kind of on that fringe out. Um, taking a decent step forward, but still kind of a fringe out. And yeah, like you mentioned, like it comes down to JT Toppin. Like, is Toppin healthy? If he's available for all these games, because I don't think he was against A&M, right? You
No.
mentioned.
Yeah, correct.
And so I think they maybe win that game, or at least, definitely play a lot better. And they still played well against A&M too. They only lost 72-67. So I think with the healthy Toppin, I think this is one of the better teams in the Big 12, and so I think that's a step up from where I thought they'd be, because I thought they'd be like I said, on the outs on that little outside looking in, just because I was wondering about, on paper I liked it, but obviously when you put things on the floor, how good are these guys stepping up to another level? Like Toppin, right? He comes from a good conference. He comes from New Mexico, but like, what happens when you step up to the Big 12? I think he's proven that he should be considered one of the Player of the Year candidates.
Yeah. We both had them at 11-9 going into the year. If
Mhm.
they get to 12 or even 13 wins,
Yeah.
I mean, if they get to 13, McCasland might be like coach of the year in the state
Mhm.
territory.
Mhm.
That would be phenomenal for year 2. And I know he was good. They had a good year 1, but at this point, we'll see. It's so interesting because the Big 12 is not as it's top heavy.
Mhm.
Like, that's what it is this year. You have the aforementioned teams we talked about, but then you do have like TCU is 73rd in KenPom. I think they're very average. Oklahoma State's 104th, like Arizona State's 55, Colorado 78. So you have these games where Texas Tech starts conference play with UCF and Utah. Well,
Yeah.
that's winnable games. Those are teams outside the top 60. So you start
Mhm.
off 2-0, and then you go into like BYU and Iowa State from there. So I like Texas Tech's positioning here, and honestly, I look at the schedule and they play Houston twice, but Kansas once, Iowa State once. Like, I could see this team getting to 13 wins here. So definitely
Yep.
stock up for Grant McCaslin and his group this season.
Yep.
I'll throw it to you. Do you have anybody specific you're looking at here when we, I guess, change conferences? Because I really don't care about talking about TCU. They've been about what I would expect. I don't
Right.
have a scathing take here on TCU. They're gonna get beat up in the
Yeah.
conference.
Who finishes higher, Texas or Texas A&M in the SEC? Both 11-2 right now. A&M nation's 8th longest win streak at 7 right now. They haven't lost since November 26th to Oregon. Haven't really. I mean, they beat Texas Tech and they beat Purdue. So I
Yeah.
was going to say they haven't played anybody, but they have. So what are we? What are
I
you thinking right now? Who
The great
finished?
part is they play on Saturday, and I cannot wait for that game. We need
That
to
is a
figure
great point.
out. Um, I know I have a game to cover that day, but we need to figure out a way to record something just
Two
on that
screen that.
game. Yeah, two screen it. Um, I'll say A&M.
Okay.
I'm still hesitant about Texas.
I am
And
too.
for those who haven't listened to our show, I've been actually fairly complimentary about Texas in terms of, I think their defense has been better than what we thought it'd be coming into the year there.
Yes.
Especially, I've mentioned it before, taking away kind of first action type stuff. They're 14th in the country in 2-point percentage defense. I mean, they've just been really, really good. They're one of the best defenses in the country, I think, at taking away your first option. And that
Mhm.
is credit to everybody: Kaluma, Shedrick, Weaver, clearly, but even Trey Johnson. It's when you get to the offense side of the ball, and we've seen it with, I think, the UConn game in particular. It's just Trey Johnson or nothing. Like, that
Mhm.
just, and Kaluma's been great. Kaluma's been fantastic this year, but it's just been a lot of Trey Johnson and hoping that he's having a good day.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure on a freshman. It feels like
Mhm.
the Kevin Durant '07 season or '06, whatever year it was. Like,
Yeah.
it just feels like that type of year where you have this star player, and then around him is just kind of, you're hoping and piecing it together and getting a bunch of role players here. So
Yeah.
I think A&M is more well-rounded. I mean, the Zurich Phelps edition has been, I think, as good as we could have hoped it to be at
Mhm.
this point, honestly. Him and Wade Taylor have worked out very well, and then Pharrell Payne's coming along, and Henry Coleman's coming along. So I think they're deeper. I think they're more talented. I think they're a better, even better defensive team. They're up to 6th in Ken Palm on defense. So I'll say A&M here, and I would say like a stock up for A&M. And would it be? I don't think
I
it's
was about to
stocking
say,
down for
I probably,
Texas.
I still, I guess I feel kind of confirmed a little bit in what I thought about Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like
I
they're
wouldn't say
fine.
stock down
I
for
think they're fine.
Texas. Yeah, they're probably about the same, but stock up for A&M, I think for
Yeah,
sure, especially because I had them at going into the year 9-9 in conference,
sure.
and I think they should surpass that.
Yeah, I feel about the same. Especially after they lost to UCF, I was like, oh, this is gonna be bad. But they've been fine. UCF was just kind of a weird blip. I don't think Baylor's as bad as when they lost to Gonzaga. First game of the year type
Yeah.
deals. So, yeah. So I'm definitely more up on A&M.
Those are the 2 SEC schools, and we've talked about before the brutal SEC schedule
Mm,
is just going to be a pain, and
yeah.
it's very true for Texas. I don't know if you've looked at Texas' schedule here,
Mhm.
but it is at A&M, home against Auburn, home against Tennessee, at Oklahoma, at Florida. Your first 5 games.
Mm. Ugh.
Kim Pom has them as underdogs in all 5.
Yeah,
That's what I'll
my
say.
God. My
Like,
God.
this is a Texas team that could be
Yeah.
legitimately top 40, top 35 in the country
Mhm.
and start off 1-4 in conference play.
My God.
I just I don't know how you do it here. I mean, I'm over here at LSU, and I think LSU is like a decent team here, but
Yeah.
they're gonna struggle. Kim Pom has Texas at 8-10 in conference play,
Oh my God.
and they have them as 33 as 33rd best team in the country. Like, if
Ugh.
I throw my hands up. I don't know what to do with this SEC. It's terrifying. Okay, on the men's side, let's see if we can jump around a little bit. We've hit the SEC now. We've hit the Big 12. Let's drop down to here's one. I'll go to
Mhm.
SMU though, real quick before we move on. This might be the highest stock up um of any program, of any team
Mm.
in Texas this year. Like, in terms of teams that have exceeded our expectations, I'm not sure there is a team that has exceeded them more than SMU to this point. And you, to your credit, you had them at 9-11 in conference. I had them at 7-13. They're gonna like flip that. They're
Yeah.
gonna go like 12 or 13
I was about
wins.
to say I would bet on them finishing with a winning record.
Yeah. So SMU biggest stock up. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, they look really good. The pieces are fitting. I was curious because I thought this, like, I think our hesitancy was that this would be kind of a rebuilding, kind of Andy Enfield kind of getting his footing at at SMU, and of course the ACC just being the ACC. Now they open up against Duke, so we'll get a very good temperature check on where this team is. If they lose that game, I don't think that changes anything. But
I mean, it's
how
Duke
they
and then North Carolina on the road are
right,
their first 2 games. Like, their 2 toughest games of the conference
yeah.
by far
And
are
so
the
I'll
first
say
2.
this: if they go 0-2, that's not going to
No.
change. But how they perform in those games is going to be big. I
Well,
don't want
especially
they look like a good team, right? The LSU win was good. The Washington State win was good. They struggled against Mississippi State, but that was still a good game from them. Um, so I don't think I'm impressed regardless, and I think I'm still stock up even if they go 0-2. But if we're talking like 15, 20-point loss here, okay, then we got some things to reevaluate, which
well,
I
I'll
don't
say
think will happen, by the way.
I'll say this also is for the tournament picture. They're one of those teams that's going to be on the bubble
Good point.
if they
Yeah.
don't win
Yeah.
their conference tournament, which maybe they do win the conference tournament, but
Right.
if they don't, they're going to be a bubble team right now. They're 41st in Ken Palm. I don't know what they are in the net. I think
Mhm.
they were around 40, I think, when LSU played them and they won
Yeah.
that game. So they're probably top 40 in the country in the net.
That's a good point.
Um, so those games, like, you can't get beat by 20 in against Duke and North Carolina. Like, those are
Yep.
resume games, especially with the rest of the ACC being very kind of up and down to
Yeah.
a degree. So those are the 2 where I'm looking at and saying, all right, again, it's how you perform. It's not
Yep.
you don't have to win the games, But I don't expect them to win the games. But with how they've surprised me to this point this year, I don't know if anything would really shock me. I mean, shout out to Boopy Miller, shout out to Matt Cross, shout out
Seriously.
to Samita Igotoglu down there, BJ Edwards, Aquindo, so Chuck Harris. Like, it's been a very, very good year.
Yeah.
And I think in the transfer portal era, we just have to kind of be like, if they can coach, they can coach.
Mhm.
I don't know if rebuild years even exist anymore, like in this day and age. It's just, if you can coach, you can coach. Go get players and go field the team, especially at a school like SMU, which is financially now making
Yeah.
sure that they're competitive
Right.
with the rest of the country. All right, the AAC, I do want to talk about here. I'll say this: North Texas to me is a stock up team,
Yep.
even though I'm still annoyed that they lost to McNeese, and I
Mhm.
still think that they could have won. Like, they could have an even better record right now,
Mhm.
but beat Minnesota on the road, beat Oregon State, beat Northern Iowa. Like, again, should have or could have won a couple other games. All their losses are very, very close.
Right.
They are currently second in the AAC in terms of projections, um, behind Memphis, who is an awesome, very, very good team this year.
Mhm.
North Texas replacing their whole roster from last year. Reuben Jones, you name it. All these guys are playing huge roles. Reuben Jones, Aaron Scott, Jason Edwards is like third in the SEC in scoring at like 19. You replace all of them, and you're still projected. Again, we'll see how it plays out. Projected to finish second in your conference. I think a top three, any top four finish would be a good year for North Texas, but they've been really consistent again, and Ross Hodge just does it again, man.
Yeah. No, I feel the exact same way. I think that there's a couple of teams at the mid-major level that I'm stock up in, which I think is a refreshing point for where we've been in kind of the
Mhm.
mid-major level. It's kind of been North Texas, Sam, last year, Tarleton,
Yeah,
past couple of years. But I would go as far as stock up. I'd go North Texas. I'd go Texas State. I'd go UTEP, and there was one more I'm forgetting in there in that bunch. But off the top of my head, those
that's a
three
good group though.
definitely. Um, I've spoken my piece
Well,
on Texas State. I think this is a team now that's going to be a contender in the Sun Belt, which I did not think that'll be a contender. And then UTEP, of course, they're still at their highest Ken Palm point in by far in Joe Golding's tenure so far. But like going back to like the best that Rodney Terry ever got when he was there. So I'm definitely high on UTEP still as well.
yeah, just beat Yale by one.
Yes,
It's a
yes, I
top
did too.
100 win for them. Now they go into conference play, and we've talked about before. Conference USA is actually really tough
Mhm.
this year. Like, we're not taking this for granted. Liberty, La Tech, Western Kentucky, Middle are all top 130
Yep.
teams, and then UTEP's there. So I agree. UTEP certainly stock up for them. The only stock down I can think of in the AAC, because I don't consider UTSA stock down. I think that
No.
they've been about where we expected them to
Yep.
be, and they've had some good showings. But what's weird is I was high on Rice,
Yeah, and then they lose to UNT Dallas.
and they lost to UNT
And
Dallas.
then they barely beat Alcorn.
No, was it Alcorn or Prairie View? No,
They beat
they barely
Prairie
beat
View
Alcorn.
handily, but they only beat Alcorn by 2.
I mean, they beat Alcorn by. I mean, they beat Prairie View by 18, and at halftime they were losing.
Right,
So
right.
I don't. But like I watched them like lose to Texas State. But like I had watched them earlier this year, like blow out Louisiana, beat
Mhm.
Arkansas State. I was feeling good about Rice. I put one of their players. I put Broadnex on my all Texas like team a month into the season, feeling good. And then I don't know what's happened the past 3 weeks here. They don't know how to play basketball anymore,
Mhm.
and so now I can't do anything but stock down for Rice here,
Yeah,
and now I'm worried that going into conference it's going to continue. Hopefully
yeah,
not, but I saw a tweet that said like the loss to UNC Dallas, like a projected spread of that game would have
yep.
been like 35-point favorites for Rice,
That's
and
insane.
like it's one of the biggest upsets in
Yeah.
theory, like in a long, long time. So that's a That's a pretty bad loss.
Corey Hogue, our sub D1 sub FBS guy, he texted me the score and he was like, "I keep forgetting UNT Dallas exists." Like the guy whose job it is to talk about these teams, he was like, "I forgot that UNT Dallas was a thing."
Literally. That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
With that. So yeah, that's stock down for Rice, but we'll see if they can bounce back. All right, if we move around just a little bit more, UT Arlington is not something we talked a ton about.
Mhm.
And the funny part is, like, they're not doing bad.
Mhm.
They've just lost to the teams that are better than them.
Yeah.
And but they did just beat Texas State yesterday.
Mhm.
So it's like they lost a lot of talent from last year's team. We've talked about it. You talked about it before. You did one of their games last year, and it was like, oh
Mm.
my God, look at these dudes. They
Yeah.
lose a lot of talent. They replace them with transfers. I don't have a lean here.
Yeah.
But I do think it's worth mentioning, and maybe like a slight stock down just now that I'm looking at it here. Like defense 247th in the country,
Mhm.
did lose to Murray State and Missouri State. So it's kind of a little stock down there. I think that's the only WAC team that I have. Oh,
Mhm.
well, Tarleton. Oh no, Tarleton. I forgot about Tarleton. That's the definitely stock down for them. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. They've been
that's
bad.
the worst team in the country, or the worst offense, one of the worst offenses in the country.
Yeah. It's been
And
bad.
ACU also probably a little stock down. So I think that's the WAC. And then the last thing I'll say before we flip to the women's side is the where am I looking here? Southland Conference. Thank you.
Mhm.
Lamar Bullet, like we go fast. Lamar stock up. Corpus Christi stock up still. Like I still think they're gonna do well, probably around 12,
Mhm.
13 wins in conference. SFA, talk about biggest stock downs. SFA might be the biggest stock down we
Mhm.
have here. They are 345th in offense right now.
Damn.
Like them and Tarleton are over here fighting.
Yeah.
That's the game we don't need. Did they play? They didn't play, thankfully. Those are two of the worst offenses in the country. So yeah, that's the Southland rundown. I'll say that. Anything else before we flip to the women's side?
Nope.
All
No.
right. The women, biggest stock up. Is it TCU? Just
Yeah, I think it's clearly TCU.
all right. So where are we at here? Because they've gone from like this fun offensive team that's like, all right, cool, we just got all these guards, we're gonna score, and then we have Sedona Prince, awesome,
Mhm.
to now a legitimate top 10 team in the
Yeah.
country that we have expectations of making a run the tournament
Right.
and winning the Big 12. Like, how high are we setting expectations here for
I mean,
TCU?
it's them or I think that they need to make tournaments are so weird. Are we talking tournament or are we talking regular season?
Regular season, winning. Yeah, winning.
They're first or second. Like it's them or Kansas State right now. I think for me, Iowa State's been a little bit down from where I think I thought they'd be. But I think that them and Kansas State, obviously TCU looked like they were, by far the best team. I don't think they're there right now. I think they've shown some cracks. Obviously, the South Carolina game was a little bit humbling, but that doesn't take anything away from TCU. So I'll say Kansas. I think stock up considered where I thought they'd be good. I thought they'd be top 25. They're probably top 10, top 15, like
Yeah.
genuinely. So like I'm gonna say stock up on them as far as like big riser because I thought again we're like, oh, this is a ranked team. This is a good team. It's like, no, they're a pretty good team. That's just not maybe top 5.
That Notre Dame win was incredible for them.
Oh yeah,
You had them at 12-6 in the non-com. I had them 11-7, so you'll end up being right on that one as well because, like I said, they should be competing here for the conference. I don't have their schedule up in front of me, but
yeah.
you mentioned Kansas State, Baylor, West Virginia is going to be in that mix as well.
I
So
think Kansas State's only loss right now is to Duke right now, and they crushed Creighton, who was on the borderline of top 25.
man,
I mean, we can talk about A&M, but like they almost beat them by legitimately 40. um, and Middle Tennessee, who's a really solid team, they beat by almost 30. So like,
Yeah.
Kansas State is a problem.
Man, what happened to Iowa State? This is an Iowa podcast, but Iowa State just lost to Oklahoma State.
They've been very disappointing. I do not
Good
know what happened.
Lord. Someone
Yeah,
someone's gotta do something about
it's
that.
been bad.
Um, I'll group these two together. I don't think it's stock down for either one of these teams.
Mhm.
I'm just over them. Houston and Texas A&M. Have they been worse than
I'm
what we
just
thought
done.
they were gonna be? Let me see what our preseason predictions were.
I think
Houston,
we might have given one bone to Houston.
you
Uh,
gave
I
them a
don't.
bone.
I don't think
You
we.
had
I
them
don't
at
think.
5-13-ish. I don't know.
Damn,
I had
dang.
them 4-14, so I wasn't that much better. But like, they are gonna win like one game.
Yeah, no, they're yeah. Like they need to. I mean, they need to win. If we're talking to get to 4, they need to win both games against UCF, basically.
Yeah.
Uh, and then
Yeah.
pull an upset against
Well,
Colorado, I guess. I don't know, man. I don't. Oh, Arizona State. They get one game against Arizona State. There's
okay.
one,
Yeah.
and then they need to beat Colorado. Like that's not happening. That's not happening.
No.
They'll split against UCF probably.
And the SEC, which is a Texas thing too, which we
Yeah,
can talk about Texas, but
yeah.
the SEC might be the best conference in women's basketball
Oh
this
yeah,
year. Like
100%.
if we flip it to A&M, like
Yeah.
A&M is gonna face like 8 ranked teams, 9 ranked teams here. So Houston at least I think has the benefit of the Big 12 maybe at the bottom, kind of
Yeah.
having a couple people you could pick off.
Right.
SEC, I don't know who the heck A&M is picking off here. We had, let's see what we had A&M. We both had them at 4-12 going into the year. Like, let's see where they're at in Bart
Yeah, I was
Torvik.
trying to think.
They're 69th in Bart Torvik, still below like UTSA and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, their only games. So I guess they'll be favored against Georgia. Bart Torvik has them favored against Georgia, Arkansas, Florida, Missouri, and Arkansas again. So they have them 5-11.
Okay. I think yeah.
If
I think
they
there's a
if
lot.
they go 5-11, Joni Taylor buys herself another year.
She might. I mean, just based off money, she might.
Yeah, just expectations here of them. But the problem is they start off with Tennessee, Ole Miss, South Carolina,
Oh my
Oklahoma as their first 4
Jesus.
games.
And then they better beat Georgia because then it's Kentucky,
And then they
LSU.
play Georgia because it's Kentucky and LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's not fun. Not fun. But if maybe they get to 5, maybe if they get to 5, they surpass our expectations ish. So
Yeah,
how about
that is
that?
true. That is
How
true.
about that? We had them 4-12. They go at 5-11. We got to eat some crow on this podcast.
That's insane. I'm not eating crow with this team, no matter what they do, unless they win the damn big SEC. I ain't eating nothing with this team.
They got so lucky they play Arkansas twice and not Texas twice.
Oh my
Oh.
god, it'd be a disaster if they played this Texas team twice.
Okay, Texas.
Yep.
Speaking of which,
Yep. The same.
where same, right? Where
Same.
did we
Yeah.
had
Like
them? No, because okay, what would you predict their conference record right now? Knowing that the SEC is as tough as it is.
who they? What do we have them at?
That's what I'm trying to get you to say before we guess it.
I would.
Or guess it before we say it.
Yeah. I'd have them at how many games in the SEC?
16, which is
16.
ridiculous. Raise it to 18 SEC. I'm so tired of playing 16.
I'd go 13-3. I think I feel confident in 13-3.
I agree. I'm around there as well.
Yeah.
You had them 11-5. I had them 12-4. Now I don't know what
Okay.
we were
Okay.
thinking at that
So
time.
maybe you technically stock up then.
Technically, stock up. Now their non-conference schedule has been terrible. We've talked
Yes.
about this. They've played
Yes. They lost. The only top team they played is Notre Dame, and they lost.
West Virginia. I'll throw it in there as well.
Good point. Good point.
They
Good
beat
point.
West Virginia, which was a very, very tight game.
Yes.
And then they lost to Notre Dame in overtime. So they're 1-1 as far as the season goes, because literally nobody else in this,
Yeah.
like Lamar, James Madison, Richmond is like
Yeah.
the next group of teams that they've played, like in terms
Right.
of quality. So we don't know. And they start off with Oklahoma on the road on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game we all need to see.
Yes.
Everybody sit down, get your popcorn.
Mhm.
Texas versus Oklahoma is not a new thing because they've been in the Big 12, but like
Right.
this is now the SEC. We could be talking about the favorite to win the SEC at this point. Yeah, I mean, besides South Carolina, I still think even though South Carolina is not bulletproof this
Right.
year, they're still the favorites. So who's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
second best team? Because I think it's Texas right now. But is it Oklahoma? Is it LSU? Tennessee's been in the mix a bit. So I do think this is a huge game to start off with here.
Yep.
That's Thursday night, Texas and Oklahoma.
I do think the start to their schedule is very interesting. So you get Oklahoma off the bat. You mentioned Arkansas, so you get your dominant, kind of put your foot down.
Yep.
Then Alabama, South Carolina, back to back, right? So you get another middle tier test, and then you get the big dog. And so it's like basically a couple, like 4 or 5 games in, I think we're gonna know. Okay, this team's going. It can win 13 games. This team's gonna win more, closer to 10 or 11. So I think it's a good balance of a schedule right off the bat.
Bart Torvik loves Texas. Absolutely loves Texas. Has them going 14-2 in conference.
Really?
I was just looking at it like when they host LSU, Bart
Yeah.
Torvik has them 15-point favorites.
Interesting.
Now the women's women's spreads are different to me. Like that wouldn't shock me. I don't know, but like, yeah, that's it's an interesting thing to keep tabs on here for
Okay.
Texas. I definitely think they're stock up at this point. Like they are better. Like they're a legitimate top 4 team in the country right now.
Right.
So, were we sure about that? I might have docked them a bit before the year because of injury concerns,
Sure.
and they haven't had those to this point. Knock on wood. But yeah, that's gonna be interesting to watch. Who else here? I have UTSA right in front of me, staring at me. So let's just do UTSA here because clear stock up. Only
Yes.
losses to A&M by 4, which
They
I
should have
said
won.
at the time. Say it again. Bad loss.
Bad
Should have
loss.
beat A&M. Bart Torvik even agrees now. They have you rated higher than A&M. You should have beat A&M. Bad loss. But since then, you look at the wins.
Yeah.
And they've beaten. They beat Corpus Christi by 20, beat UTEP by 5, beat New Mexico State by 14, beat Sam Houston State by 43, like UTA by 15, Texas State 16. They've just beat Charlotte by 14. So them and a Stanford loss by 5 are the only two that we have so far.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a team that Bart Torvik has them going 14-4 in conference. This is like a conference championship caliber team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's fair, and I think they're living up to when we've speculated, we're like, okay, what's this team? What's last year's team missing? Obviously, Akira White, but what's it like with a healthy Jordan Jenkins? And the answer has been she's just played really big with her Jenkins and Idara Udo, and the guard play has been pretty good. Like it's hard to replace, obviously hard to replace Kira White, but they've done it a little bit by like committee with Sydney Love, Nina De Leon Negron, and a bunch of other players, and it's kind of working. So like, okay, I'm into it. I'm really into it. So I think that this is a really, really good mid-major team that I really hope we get to see in a NCAA tournament.
Bart Torvik has an efficiency map. Shout out to Bart Torvik. You see UTSA and USF up here, like clearly above everybody else.
Very much far and away.
North Texas, middle of the pack. I think they're good, not great. Rice, good, not great. So 2 teams there that North Texas maybe slightly disappointed this year.
Yeah, I'd
not
say
major.
so far.
So far, we'll see how conference goes. They could go 13-5 in conference and not surprise anybody. But I do think this is a good depiction kind of where we're at with. I think these are the 2 clear best teams in the conference right now, which is, man, Karen Aston.
What a job.
What a
this team won like 2 games like 5 years ago.
I'm trying to see when UTSA plays South Florida right now. Let me go look that up.
Oh, that's gonna be an incredible
because
game.
that's gonna determine the conference champion.
Yeah.
North Texas got a big win over Wichita State on the road yesterday. Like I said, it wouldn't surprise me at all if North Texas ends up being like the 4th best team in the conference, which would be a very, very good year.
Yep.
Especially, considering how last year when their year 1, following that up with another win is huge. So It's not like a big stack down for North Texas. It's just,
Yeah.
going into the year, it was like, oh, this is like the best team in the conference. They haven't quite been that to this
Mhm.
point. So, them, Rice, I don't know Malia Fisher if she's returned or her situation
Yeah,
to this point.
I don't think she's back, or at least I haven't
So it's kind of
seen
hard to
enough
grade
to.
them
Yeah,
with that in mind here.
yeah. Uh, I
Go
will
ahead.
say two teams that are kind of, in my opinion, stock up, who recently played each other. Actually, it's kind of spreading conferences a little bit, but Tech and SMU.
I agree.
I think
Both of
that
them.
Tech. I was really worried about Texas Tech this year, like really worried. And I think they've shown themselves. I don't think they're going to be a conference contender or anything, but I do think this is a middle of the pack potentially Big 12 team. They
Mhm.
just beat Houston, of course, which of course
Of course.
is the test of if you're not if you're at the bottom or not. They just beat Houston pretty handily. They beat a good Lamar team, close game, but still a good Lamar team.
Yep.
Close loss to SMU, who I'll get to in a bit, and they've kind of figured some things out. Excuse me, they kind of figured some things out. The point guard situation still is not great, but they are making things work with Bailey Maupin and Jasmine Shavers, kind of their two pseudo point guards, and they're just shooting the hell out of the ball.
Yeah.
We know that this team wasn't going to be very good defensively. They haven't been, and it doesn't matter. They're just saying, you know what, we can shoot. We have a ton of players who can shoot. We have players off the bench who can stretch the floor as a big. We're going to do that, and it's working. So they could start 2-0. I think they're favored against Arizona State as well. So they can start 2-0 in Big 12 play before they get Kansas State and then West Virginia, which are going to be two massive games. And oh my God, then they get TCU. Oh my God, this is
And
awful.
then if Iowa State remembers how to play basketball, you get them too.
All right, so we're about to see them really quickly about what the team really is. But to start the year, I did not expect them to be at this point. What are they right now? They are 12-2. Like again, not a hard schedule, but like I didn't expect 12-2. So
No.
I'm gonna give them credit. And then SMU, another team that
I was
didn't really
low
know
on them.
I didn't really know what to think about them. Right, I was low
Yeah.
on them, but more so in the sense that they're going to the ACC, obviously. Um, I'm more intrigued now than I was. They have two really good wins over North Texas and Texas Tech. Of course, they lost to, to Florida State. I don't know if that was a conference game technically. I think it might have been, but
Yes.
it
Yes,
was
it
really
was. Yes, it
okay. It
was.
was. It was a really early conference game.
Mhm.
But I'm very intrigued. Torvik has them only as a 6-point underdog right now to Stanford. That's really good. And this is a program that struggled under Toya Wilson to get kind of a footing, and they've seemed to found something. We'll see. I don't know. I'm going stock up, even though they may finish with the same record as I predicted.
Yeah.
But
The vibes are good.
vibes are good.
The vibes are
Vibes
good
stock
for
up.
SMU. That's all I care about right now. The
Yeah.
vibes are good through non-conference. Like you said, Stanford, Cal, Syracuse, they should. I hope they can win one of those games.
Yeah.
Like that, those you should be able to win one of those three games, especially
Yeah.
with the way that they've played to this point. And then you have, well, Pitt also throw them in there. Like you should
Mm-hmm.
2-2 is not out of the picture here.
Yeah.
Your first four games, and then you have North Carolina, Notre Dame, Duke, Miami, Louisville, like Georgia Tech somewhere in there, who I think is good this year. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
that group. But you should start 2-2, and we go from there. Like the vibes are good for SMU. The vibes are good for Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one's going to win a conference championship this year, but hey, shout out. The vibes are important,
Yep.
especially with these teams here.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. We already hit the AAC, so yeah, we can just go to any mid majors here.
Yep.
Stephen F. Austin, I was looking at, hasn't played. Well, they did just beat San Diego State and Colorado State, who are both in the top 150 of Bart Torvik. They lost to
Yeah.
RGV, lost to Texas Tech. But I do think when we look at this team in the Southland, which we've talked about it before, the Southland for women's is a battleground. Like that
Yeah.
is going to be an absolute war every single night here. Southeastern is still 136th. Or no, 138. Lamar is 110. SFA is 115. Nichols is 172. A&M Corpus Christi 179. That's 5 top 180 teams for reference, like on the men's side, it is like 2 top
Yeah.
150 teams, I think. Maybe 1. I don't. It might just be McNeese at this point. I don't know. Here, let me go look
Mm.
at it. Yeah, that's it. Lamar is second at 189. Corpus Christi
Yeah.
183 on the men's side. You have 5 top 180 teams. Like this is a legitimately good basketball conference and
Yes.
super competitive.
Yep.
So I want everybody to know that before we talk about the Southland like frequently on this podcast,
Right.
it's because they're just like actually like good basketball teams being played and good games being played here. So with
Right.
that being said, SFA has projected 16-4 in conference currently by Bart Torvik, same as Lamar, and we know how the battle that's going to be. Lamar, I would say, is even. I don't think there's
Yeah.
stock up or down. SFA, same type of thing, like nothing really shocking. I will say maybe I thought they could have been more competitive with Texas Tech if you want to be really
Yeah. No,
nitpicky.
I think that's fair.
And then the loss to RGV, which RGV is a good team.
That's
Again,
that's another stock up we'll talk about.
yeah, that is a huge stock up, but that is a conference game
Yeah.
where you kind of expect them to win. They split with RGV and Corpus Christi, and so we'll see how they do in the Southland. But
Yeah.
in theory, the Southland Conference is really really fun
Yeah.
because I didn't even mention RGV, who is competitive as heck.
Yeah, I mean, we thought they'd be a doormat,
Yeah,
honestly. Like we straight up did, and they're fighting around 500 right now. Of course, you mentioned they beat SFA. They looked really good against Abilene Christian. They looked good against Texas State.
beat
So it was like
Houston.
they did beat Houston. We do remember that one. Almost beat UTSA as well. I remember,
Hmm.
yeah. And so it was like, okay, like there's something there, right? Okay, they're not going to contend for this conference because it's so tough, but they're a team that are gonna nick some people and give them some L's, and people are going to look and say, "Damn, they lost this team, Southeastern Louisiana, right? They lost the conference because they lost that one game to UTRGV or something, right?
Yeah,
They're going to be that type of team this year." Lamar, same with you, even, and Carter Word hovering around there, right? They're kind of on that little next tier, probably outside of the top, with Southeastern Louisiana, Lamar, and SFA, but. Excuse me, they're right there. They're out there in that next group, in my opinion. 2-0, I believe, right now, Northwestern State and Commerce, with 2 wins over them. So, decent from them, I'd say. But yeah, the Southland's just going to be especially that top 3 is just going to be stupid. That top 3 is going to be decided by like 2 games.
yes, like literally, it's gonna be 15-5, 15-5, like 16-4. Someone's
Right.
gonna just get an extra win somewhere, and pull it out. So,
Yep.
all right, I think that covers most of the state.
Yeah. I wanted one
Go
shout
ahead.
out real quick for I think I'm even still, but Abilene Christian's kind of putting things together.
Mhm.
They looked a little shaky. They had a 4-game losing streak. It's a tough schedule, but SFA, North Texas, Texas Tech, and Western Kentucky, and they've rattled off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 since. Um, and I want to mention my girl Peyton Hall, who's turning it around because she really struggled
Yeah.
shooting the ball early. She had, let me see, I had her. I was looking at her scores earlier, and she was obviously against. I think she went like 0 for 5 in like multiple games. Let me see from 3. 0 for 5, 1 of 10. That was the one I was thinking of against North Texas from 3. Against New Mexico, 6 of 13 from 3.
There we
So
go.
she's turning it around. 2 for 4 against South Sacramento State before that. So she's turning it around a little bit more, and she's starting to become the player that we thought she could. She was a freshman, taking that next step. 29 points coming off of a big win over New Mexico. So even for Abilene Christian, but they're starting to round into the contender that I would hoping they would be this year. So
Yeah. Um, in the 2 games since we talked about Yvonne Tensai for
yeah.
UTEP, she is 3 of 10 from 3.
All right.
I think we jinxed her.
Yeah, it can't. The good things can't last forever.
So,
We're still here though. We're still waiting.
we're still here. We're still here. Well, she can be on my team anytime off the bench. Okay? Just shoot it. Chuck it up there.
Just keep shooting.
Just keep shooting. All right. That's all we got for y'all today. Hope y'all enjoyed the episode. To reset everything before conference play, give y'all a little stock up, stock down. So everybody should be set. Now we just talk about games because every game matters at this
Yeah.
point. Every single game matters. We'll have some big games to preview on Thursday. Like I said, Texas and Oklahoma play that night, so we'll try to do a little bit of them. And then Texas and A&M men's play on Saturday. We'll preview that as well. And just a lot of good games now. We're in conference play. The calendar will flip. So everybody get ready. Like I said, the Big 12 men start today, this Monday. We're recording this. So today and tomorrow are their first batch of games. So we'll be locked into all that. And yeah, stay tuned. Now that football season is in the rear view, we can lock in on these basketball games. So leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening on Apple or Spotify. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us a like on YouTube as well. And we will talk to y'all later.